Drive Home Reviews podcast, where I review the movies I have just seen as I am driving home from the theater. And, okay, before I get into talking about this movie, there is something I want to talk about that is kind of related to this movie, but it's more of another example of an increasing problem. At least for me, just something that's just been annoying me this entire year, and I just kind of noticed it kind of offhandedly one day, and was just kind of like, that's interesting. And it just kind of, when I thought about it, it just kept growing and growing, and it has really been bugging me lately, and it's such a minor thing. So before we talk about this movie, if you'll excuse me, I need to rant for a second.
Now, I don't want to get off on a rant here, but...
So, we live in an entertainment industry that is very addicted to reboots, reimaginings, remakes, that kind of thing, sequelizing. The producers of that latest Pixar film, that Elio, I think it was, were commenting on it because that film didn't perform well at the box office, and they were saying, everybody complains that all we do are remakes and sequels, but when we release something original, no one goes and sees it. So...
What do you want, Lindsay? Tell me what you want! Well, I'll tell you what you want. You want nothing! You want nothing!
And I'm actually not here to complain about that. What I'm complaining about is, if we're gonna do this, can we please come up with some subtitles for some of these movies? I think this year, so far, in all the years I've been reviewing, this year has the most renamed movies. And it's just... Again, it started out as a minor thing, and then I just realized how many movies we've seen that use the exact same name as other films in its class, genre, series, I don't know. I mean, just look at this. So these are just some examples. Smurfs, Lilo and Stitch, Wolfman, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Superman, Naked Gun, How to Train Your Dragon, and that's just a couple of them. Like, can we, at least, things like Final Destination, Fantastic Four, Jurassic World, they still put the subtitles. Bloodlines, Rebirth, First Steps, okay, great. Separates it from the originals, or dictates its place in the, in the series. But I mean, for crying out loud, this is just crazy. Okay, so How to Train Your Dragon and Lilo and Stitch, okay, they can get a pass. They are live action remakes, so yeah, it would make sense you would use the exact same name. So yeah, but even like Snow White earlier in this year, they changed the title by shortening the name. Of course, I guess, what would you call it? Like just Lilo? Or yeah, so they can get a pass. I'll also maybe give a little bit of a pass to I Know What You Did Last Summer, because that's kind of a hard one to, outside of just sticking a number on the end of it, that is a hard one to kind of find new ways to play with the title. I mean, especially since I Still Know What You Did Last Summer and I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer have already been taken. But then again, you're just renaming this after the first one. You could have renamed this one I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. It actually fits it. And it's not like that direct-to-video sequel is really using it. Superman, originally, when it was in development, it was called Superman Legacy. What the hell happened to that? Come on, people. And the reason I bring this up now, or how about this one before I get into that? Smurfs. How many fucking Smurfs movies have there been? You could have called this one Smurfs. We're charging this IP out again to give another fading pop star a voiceover paycheck. See, rolls right off the tongue. But the reason I'm bringing this up now and why this really makes me mad, as regards to this film, is of all these movies, this is the one that you kind of expected could have some more fun with the title. Considering that it is a legacy sequel, I guess not really, because, Priscilla Presley, I think, has a cameo in it, and she's the only member of the original cast that's still alive, sadly. But it is supposed to be continuing on, so you could have called this one The Naked Gun Reloaded, The Naked Gun, Stripped Clean, or something like that. The other ones in the series had fun with the titles, with the Smell of Fear and, the Final Insult, even the original, From the Files of Police Squad. I mean, again, especially when you consider that the actual name, The Naked Gun, came about because the Zuckers wanted to give this movie a title it couldn't possibly live up to. That's where the name The Naked Gun came from, is that they wanted to give it a title that in no way, shape, or form had really anything to do with anything that was going on. You could have totally done that with this. You could have used this one to hang a lampshade on the fact that this is such a reboot, reimagining, legacy sequel, dominated media time. You could have called it The Naked Gun Reloaded, remade, rewatched, reanimated. You could have done any of that stuff, and they just went with the straight up same title. Please, Hollywood, pay the publicity department an extra 50 cents and have them come up with a couple of subtitles for these films. Please. It's just maddening. I mean, it's not quite as bad as the Shaft series, where if you look at that one, there are 3 movies in that series actually named Shaft. Because you had the Samuel L. Jackson remake or continuation in the early 2000s, and then a few years ago you had another one also called Shaft. So, it's a minor argument, but it's one that's been bugging me for a while.
I'm sorry, it's my problem. I'll deal with it.
So, after that, now we can talk about The Naked Gun. And so this film, especially with me, it had a hard act to follow. And I think most people will agree that it had a very, very hard act to follow. The original Naked Gun and its sequels are, in my opinion, some of the greatest comedies ever made. They are still funny, still laugh out loud, good time movies, even to this day. And not only that, so you're already trying to capitalize or recapture the glory of something that is very, very beloved, but you're also trying to do it in a style of comedy that really, in terms of motion pictures, it doesn't really exist anymore. The goofy, I don't even know what you classify this as. I guess technically you could call it a parody movie, even though it's not really parodying anything, a specific cop show, but yeah, it was originally parodying, the formulaic nature of procedural cop dramas and the two-fisted tough guy policeman, those types of things. But these kind of, 10 jokes a minute, fast-paced, loaded with humor kind of jokes, these live action cartoons, they have kind of died out in terms of major motion pictures. And there are a lot of reasons for that. So right now, let's do another edition of that beloved segment. Brandon rattles on about history in order to shamelessly pad the runtime.
I guess you won't need any help with the ancient history questions.
And what makes you the ancient history expert?
I was there.
Picture it. Sicily, 1912.
So why did the parody kind of die out? Well, I think there are a number of reasons. The main one, I don't think the main one, these are in no specific order, is that they were always kind of a hard sell from an audience perspective. Because these are comedies that, this sounds so stupid, but that you actually have to watch and pay attention to. You have to listen to them and watch them because, the best examples of these movies, your Airplanes, your Naked Guns, Hot Shots, they are just joke after joke after joke after joke, and some of them are very obvious and some of them are not. Some of them are very subtle in the wording because they're doing puns or wordplay. Others are sight gags that are going on behind the main action. So yeah, it sounds dumb, but you actually do have to pay attention to them. As a matter of fact, going off on our history lesson, some people might not know, especially younger listeners or viewers of this movie or the originals, is that The Naked Gun actually began life as a television series. It only ran for 6 episodes. That's why the first one is called From the Files of Police Squad, because Police Squad was the name of the show. And the show was canceled because, for the exact reason I gave you. That's exactly what the network told the Zucker brothers, was that when people watch TV, even comedies, they're not really watching TV. They're making dinner, they're reading the paper, they're doing stuff around the house, so giving them a show that they have to sit and watch and really listen to in order to get all of the jokes, they said that was just too much. And in a way, they were kind of right. That's why it worked so much better as a movie, because, theoretically, when you're in a movie theater, you should just be paying attention to the screen. So it requires a lot of attention from the audience, and let's face it, folks, we are attention deprived. We do not have the attention span that we once had. And this isn't just an old man yelling at the clouds, because I'm guilty of this too. I notice that I'll watch TV, but I'll also be on my phone at the exact same time. So it's like, I'm no better, but we do have a much shorter attention span, so asking us to kind of focus in that much is difficult. The other thing, and it branches off from this, is that movies like that have that many jokes, regardless of kind of what we may think of how easy it is, are actually a lot harder to come up with, because it does take a lot of thought to shoehorn all of those things into a single movie. And really think about it. For those who are like me and are lovers of things like Airplane, The Naked Gun, Hot Shots, really go and look at those movies and how many jokes and how many sight gags, slapstick puns, wordplay, pop culture references, the occasional gross out humor, how much is in there and how much that had to take with trial and error and, try this doesn't work. And it's not like you can do with these films kind of like the Marx Brothers used to do with their stage performances and go and test out the routines they were going to do in the movie on an audience to get an idea of how long they were going to laugh, so they knew kind of how much spacing, or to know, okay, that joke's not landing, let's take it out and put in another one. You're just kind of, you're going by feel, and what kind of started happening as we see the decline of these movies. So, like I say, those were kind of the ones I've mentioned were always the creme de la creme. And then you have the other ones that are okay, not great, but they're okay. Things like Fatal Instinct, which I don't think a lot of people even remember Fatal Instinct. It was kind of one of the last ones. And then in the late 90s and going into the early 2000s, we get the things like Scary Movie. We get the movies, because that became the thing with these films, is to just group them together. I think you had fantasy movie, epic movie, date movie, not another teen movie. And all of these, I think the original Scary Movie and Not Another Teen Movie have their moments. Like, I still like those movies. They're nowhere near as good as these Golden Age ones, but they are still, they do have funny elements in them. But, the studios wanted to get these films out faster, and as such, you didn't have a lot of time to fine-tune the humor, and you can really see the declining returns. And eventually, these things died out in terms of on-screen movies. Oh, another good one? And I'm sorry I did not mention this one. Top Secret, starring the late, great Val Kilmer. So I apologize. Top Secret belongs in that conversation with these other ones, like Airplane and the Hot Shot movies. So, yes, I apologize. But at any rate, these kind of things kind of started to die out, at least in movies. You still see things like this on TV occasionally. For instance, Family Guy, created and written and starring Seth MacFarlane, who is the executive producer on this film, did those Star Wars parodies, which were pretty good and were basically Airplane or The Naked Gun, just in animated form. And honestly, they use a lot of jokes from those films. So there's a real challenge coming in to making this movie in this day and age. Some people might also say the issue is that that old complaint, you can't make these kind of movies these days because people are, will complain too much. It's like, maybe I think we are a bit more, which is good, we are more sensitive to things these days, but I think in a world where Family Guy and South Park, and Tropic Thunder still exist, I don't think that, I think you can get away with some edgier stuff. I do. I think there is a market for it, and, it needs to be done right. But, and again, that's another one of the problems. It's got to be done right. And a lot of these other movies aren't interested in that. They just want to get it out quick. And so things weren't done right. But I did have faith for this movie because Seth MacFarlane was a part of it. And again, watch Family Guy. He is a fan of these types of movies. He is very clearly very influenced by them. He references them a lot in Family Guy. And so I think these films probably went a long way to informing his sense of humor. Even movies of his like A Million Ways to Die in the West are vaguely in that genre, So yeah. So it's a difficult task. And I guess the question we have to ask after this long bit of rambling about stuff that has nothing to do with the actual movie is, does the movie work? Is it funny? Is it good? And the response is, surprisingly, yes. It is surprisingly not bad. I say not bad because it's nowhere near the original, but nothing really could be. But it is not this awful, cheap laugh, pandering kind of thing that it could have been, that I was worried from some of the trailers and commercials. Because again, a comedy like this is very hard to market because you don't want to give away all the best jokes in the trailers and commercials, and also it's hard to even do that because a lot of these jokes require setup, and you can't cram the entire setup and payoff for, every joke into a quick commercial or trailer. It's very, very difficult. But yeah, I think that this movie pulls it off. Now, here's the thing for me, and one of the reasons why I've rambled on about these other elements. One, I do believe it is relevant, but also because it is kind of difficult to review a movie like this. It's always difficult to review a comedy in the first place, because comedy is subjective, but also to review a wacky comedy like this, it's extremely difficult. If it's bad, then you can just say, okay, here's this joke and it didn't fucking work, and here's this joke and it was stupid. But if it's good, you can't really give examples because I'm trying to describe a joke to someone. You're not even telling the joke, you're describing the joke, which is really, really difficult. And then even if I do manage to do it, I've now ruined the joke for you, and people should go into this and watch it on their own. So what I tried to do, I think the best way to rate this movie is to come up with a series, not so much, well, yes, I guess they would be rules for making a good parody movie. So what did, Hot Shots, Top Secret, Airplane, The Naked Gun, what did they do right that subsequent movies like the Scary Movie sequels and all those other ones that I mentioned did wrong? And where does this movie fall in that conversation? So that's the best way I can think of to kind of review this film in any meaningful way. So let's take a look at some of the rules for a parody.
There are certain rules that one must abide by.
Okay, so, and again, these are in no particular order. Let's take a look at the first one. That would be, you have to love the subject matter. A good parody is laughing with the movie it is making fun of, not at it. That's a big one. Mel Brooks himself, comedy legend Mel Brooks, said that you have to love the thing you're making fun of. In The Producers, he makes fun of the inner workings of Broadway. Spaceballs, he makes fun of science fiction movies. But that is a key component to making these things work, because the ones that work, we can still laugh with, and it can point out things in movies we've seen and go, isn't this kind of silly? And we can go, yeah, it is. But it also gets that we, the audience, love those movies because of those perceived flaws or silly moments or elements that are kind of out there, not in spite of them. Compare this to, like, again, the Scary Movie sequels and the subsequent movies. These movies clearly were just trying to take pot shots at films. There was no love, no affection. It was basically saying you, the audience, are stupid for liking it. And that level of distaste comes across, and no fan wants to go see a movie that's already making fun of something they love and basically be told you're stupid for loving it. So that's a big one. So where does this movie fall? It's kind of an interesting dichotomy, because this movie clearly loves the Naked Gun. It clearly loves the Naked Gun and is trying to be honest to it and faithful to it while also being its own thing. But it very much loves the Naked Gun. So that love and affection comes out. Where it falls a little short is that it doesn't embrace the goofiness of the making fun of procedurals or cop movies or TV shows in the way that the originals did. That is a little bit evident sometimes. And I think that there is a wide variety of things they could have drawn inspiration from, like the Law & Order series, which is still on the air. There's got to be stuff you can pull from that. It does take the time to kind of do like the originals did and poke fun a bit at modern day issues. They, making fun of the, police needing to wear body cams and the kind of flagrant brutality that white officers will sometimes throw around, and kind of saying, yeah, this is an issue, and, see? So, I think this one kind of falls halfway in that. Does it love the subject matter? Number two is you need a variety of jokes. We've already kind of covered this, but what made a lot of those films so funny is that there's a lot going on. Not only that, but they are creative with the weirdness of what's going on. Sometimes they will go for the obvious joke, and other times they will make you think they're going for the obvious joke and then double back and do something you didn't expect. And again, they get very creative with what they can do. I think of Top Secret and the backwards scene. And if you've never seen Top Secret and don't know what I'm talking about, you need to go take care of that right this second. So yeah, it does. So does this one have that variety of jokes? Not as much as I would hope. More than I thought, though. I was worried. One of the downfalls of these types of movies, when they're done poorly and they're lazy, is that most of the time, like you look at those last couple ones, they were mostly 99% gross out humor. That was basically all they were. And they failed to recognize that a good one of these will have a gross out moment in them, and they'll have some off-color blue jokes in them, but they are balanced by everything else. Like a good AEW pay-per-view. You get a little bit of everything. It's not just the same match time after time after time. So I was a little worried this one would fall into the gross out humor trap. To my surprise, it relies more on the verbal humor, clever verbal humor, and fun with turn of phrases and common sayings that we use every day and how they are very easily misinterpreted because of, the wording. It's very Abbott and Costello kind of stuff. And a lot of it lands. Like, I laughed a lot in this movie. And again, a lot of the word delivery is very clever, and I think they took their time and came up with some really good jokes. A lot of the sight gags are funny. I will say that it didn't seem like this one took advantage of its setup as much as it could have. I think we could have used some more cartoony elements, some more background jokes. Okay, like the climax of the movie takes place at a UFC fight, which they call the WWF, which I guess is also an inside joke, really. And they really don't have the kind of fun with that location and that group of fans and that gathering of people that, say, even the weakest of the Naked Gun films, the last one, 33 1/3, had with them being at the Oscars. I feel like they were a little tame. I don't know if that's because, maybe it's because this one I think was rated PG or PG-13, so they didn't go for that R rating, which, to be honest, if those Naked Gun movies, while they were rated PG-13, if they were released today, they would be rated R. Let's be honest. So maybe it was that. Maybe they were concerned about that, and I do think we are in a little bit more, and I don't say this was a bad thing, so nobody, get upset, but we are in a bit of a more sensitive society, so they were a little bit worried about going a little too far, maybe in one way or another, that might offend somebody. I don't know. It did feel like it was holding itself back instead of really going balls to the wall. I wonder what this would have been like if Seth MacFarlane had directed it instead of just executive producing it. Because his movies, like, again, Million Ways to Die in the West, even Ted and the Ted TV series, Family Guy and all that, they go for it. They go full on. And this one, excuse me, this one felt like it was holding itself back. So, the third act is not as strong as the rest of it, and so yeah. But they did have a variety. They did challenge things. Interesting enough, they didn't do as many pop culture references. And that is a staple of this kind of film series, is that they do reference movies and things from their era, or politicians and things from their era, very overtly. I mean, the second one had a George and Barbara Bush impersonator as major characters in the film. So, they've never been afraid to really go there. But, it's possible in this political climate, they had to kind of rely more on subtext and visual cues as opposed to, coming right out and saying it. But, again, that's something that the first one had a Queen Elizabeth impersonator, so there you go. So yeah, I do feel like it was holding itself back a bit, but it's more intelligent than I was expecting it to be. So I give it a lot of props for that. All right, and here's the big one. Here's the third rule. This is a big one, and it's really important, and it's one that a lot of these ones kind of forgot about as they kind of started to go down. The film has to take itself seriously. It has got to be serious. The comedy can never know it's in a comedy. That is the big secret behind the success of some of these and the failure of others. The ones that are classics because even though it is directed and everything about it is this big cartoon, the film itself is not breaking character. That's what made Leslie Nielsen and Lloyd Bridges such amazing hands at these movies. And it's also one of the secrets to one of the best of these ever made, the gold standard, Airplane. People forget this now, but a lot of the cast of that, Lloyd Bridges, Leslie Nielsen, Robert Stack, They were not comedians when that movie was made. They were dramatic actors, and they were known for their dramatic work. Leslie Nielsen played a lot of villains, believe it or not. And people told them not to do this movie because it was going to ruin their career. People were never going to take them seriously again, But they went in and did it, and people loved them so much that it actually gave them a little bit of a career renaissance. You compare this to, again, the later of these, where it just feels like they are just trying to make you laugh at the movie is very aware of what it's doing. Those, epic movie, disaster movie, date movie, dance movie, they're all very, very aware of what it is. And so because the characters aren't taking it seriously, it doesn't make the jokes funny when they land. You don't feel bad for them or laugh with them when something happens. Again, it goes back to that very mean-spirited take on them. So, how does this movie do? It does fantastic. It does fantastic at that. And the key to it, just like it was with Leslie Nielsen in the original, is Liam Neeson. Because I doubted it at first, but I thought about it and I watched the movie and it was like, yeah, Liam Neeson is the perfect guy for this type of comedy. That's straight-faced. I'm going to say outrageous things, but I'm going to do it in the most serious tone of voice and the most deadpan expression you can possibly imagine. Just like I'm reading the lines for one of my other movies where I actually play a character like this. And because of that delivery and that commitment to it, it fucking works. It's kind of like Patrick Stewart being on American Dad and how funny he is on that, or how funny he and Ian McKellen can be in any of their comedies, because they are just so good, and Liam Neeson really brings it home. He also has a lot of help. This has a great cast. CCH Pounder is in this as the chief. She's fantastic. Paul Walter Hauser, who's having a hell of a July with this and his small role in Fantastic Four, is a great kind of sidekick, comic foil. Not quite as good as George Kennedy in the originals, because, again, George Kennedy was known as a dramatic actor. So, I don't know, maybe if they'd had a more dramatic actor in that role, it might have punched a little bit harder, but I think he did a good job. You know who really deserves the MVP for this? And I'm so, or maybe I should say the VIP, is Pamela Anderson. I am so happy to see that she is doing movies again, and she is finally getting to, decades later, she can finally break out of that, Baywatch type casting and show that, she's maybe not, Sophia Loren or Jessica Chastain, but she's still a good actor, and she's still talented, and she's still really funny. And she matches Liam Neeson really well here. I was very impressed with her performance and how just very, very good she was. And they make the movie. It was a good pairing. It's one that doesn't make sense on paper, but it is one that makes sense when you actually watch the movie and you're like, oh, yeah, that's pretty freaking funny right there. So yeah, it does. It takes itself seriously enough. And I appreciated that. So, I don't know how accurate a review this actually has been or how helpful it is. It turned into kind of a dissertation on parodies and where they went wrong. But, that's the only way I can think of to talk about this movie. Long story short, it's funny. It is a good time at the movies. I don't think it's a classic, but I do think it is a love letter to a series of films that are classics. It's a good continuation, good performances, and I think if you go see this, you will laugh at something. And if you don't laugh, at least, I think you'll at least enjoy it. I think you'll... I also have to say, I am going to spoil some things. One thing I liked, one thing I didn't like. One thing I didn't like is they did not do the opening with the police siren going through all these different crazy places. I was mad about that. I'm still a little mad about that. I think that's an important part of the film. You should have kept that. They didn't. So yeah, I'm a little peeved about that. But they did keep up the series tradition of guest starring Weird Al Yankovic. So I was very happy about that. I was glad they got Weird Al, because I saw him at the premiere and I was like, or I saw pictures of him, I wasn't there. I was like, oh, I wonder if he's got a part in this one. I hope he does, and he did, and it made me very, very happy. So yeah, I think this is a good time at the movies and a nice kind of cool down after this very hectic and very bombastic July. It's a nice kind of segue into a little bit more calmer time at the movies. So I say go see it. So final grade for Naked Gun 2025, I give it a B-. I do give it a B-. It could have tipped over to that C, and I think Act 3 was in danger of that. But at the end of the day, I enjoy it. I'll definitely buy it when it comes out. So yeah, I can't really think of a higher praise for it. Okay, so thank you for listening to that very long diatribe. I hope you got something out of it. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you and yours are doing well. Take care. We'll see you next time. And as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.